Welcome to this retrospective slash review for MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. And I just kind of want to give a brief overview of some of my thoughts on the game. And like I've started doing here recently, I've started writing down some of the Cliff Notes versions of my thoughts so I can kind of keep everything a little more organized and a little less incoherent while I try to come up with things. So yeah, basically let me try to just get in here and we'll jump into an instant action so you can see some stuff going on in the background while I talk about some of the pros and cons to this game. And more importantly, this is a game that you would want to, I guess would be a better way of saying, draw some comparisons to the Battletech strategy game that came out, I guess officially only about a year before this one. But MechWarrior wasn't really available to as many people until much later. I mean, technically MechWarrior 5 came out in 2019, but a lot of us didn't get to, purchase it until later unless you had a Epic Games account. So, without further ado, let me just let this thing generate, and that looks good to me. And let me go ahead and start with some of the pros of the game. And also let me say, if you're going to get this game, I'm just going to go ahead and say this right up front. You want the Jump Ship edition of MechWarrior 5 because one of the biggest criticisms of this game initially was lack of content and how there just wasn't a lot there when it first came out. And honestly, I could probably see where a lot of people are coming from in regards to that. But if you get the Jump Ship edition of the game, it comes with Heroes of the Inner Sphere and Legend of the Kestrel Lancers. And both of those DLC packs, they're amazing. They are just both really good DLC packs. Now, I can't say that about every DLC pack, to be fair. Get out of the way, you slow awesome. I can't say that about every DLC pack, to be completely and totally fair, but oh man, but I can definitely say that Heroes of the Inner Sphere and Legend of the Kestrel Lancers, grade A, and the amount, and that's basically brings me to my first pro for the game, absolutely, is the amount of content in the game. If you have those two DLC packs, it's quite amazing, actually, at least in my opinion, because the I have no idea where I wanted to do my weapon groups here, but they add a whole bunch of stuff. Well, first of all, both Heroes of the Inner Sphere and Legend of the Kestrel Lancers add 7 high reward mission chains each in the campaign. And Heroes of the Inner Sphere adds, I believe, another 4 into career mode, which, once again, that was something that was not available in the original game, was career mode. So career mode is definitely something that I think is really very nice in it's a really good feature that if you didn't have it originally, like it wasn't there originally, I can understand people saying that, yeah, it's not a complete game. So Heroes of the Inner Sphere, definitely by adding those 11 high reward mission chains and career mode, adds quite a bit just with that one DLC alone. Then Legend of the Kestrel Lancers adds, once again, 7 more high reward mission chains, which is really good, and that's great. But they also add probably just an amazing story, to say the least, in basically the Legend of the Kestrel Lancers itself. I thought the story for Legend of Kestrel Lancers, I thought that, was it 12, 14 missions? However many missions it was, I thought it was absolutely excellent story. And the fact that it tied in so well with all the lore and all the books and everything that happened was just great. And if you're a fan of BattleTech, the universe, all the backstory and everything to it, this game implements so much of that lore into the game. It's just really awesome, in my opinion. What the heck is shooting at me? Oh, I see you now. But anyway, like I said, if you're a fan of BattleTech and you like the lore, this game, just the little headlines that it has there at the when you're sitting there in your drop ship, I think that's pretty awesome, and it is great to say the least. But yeah, lore and amount of content. If you have both those expansions, there's just a lot to this game to be completely and totally fair. And I don't think that anybody could say that the game is definitely lacking as far as content now, for sure. And like I said, Legend of the Kestrel Lancers was by far my favorite story in the game. And even a lot of the high reward mission chains themselves, even though it was a fairly short, self-contained story, I liked those smaller, well-contained stories. I thought that was really cool. So let me talk about some of the cons to the game, because I don't want to make it sound like this game is just absolutely great and I think everybody should go out and get it, because I kind of do, because I do like the game quite a bit. But at the end of the day, there were definitely some cons to it. And when we get into the actual story itself, you could definitely say that the campaign story was very disjointed. That was basically my main one of the things about this game, for sure, I think was definitely something that could have been done better. And well, the same thing could be said of the original BattleTech strategy game. I think it was very disjointed as well, and it just kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't say it was necessarily bad, but I wouldn't actually say it was great either. So that's just something to keep in mind as far as that's concerned. Let's see here. Achievements is something I do think would be a fair comparison with the BattleTech strategy game, as well as, and with this one. So it's both a con and something I would like to compare with BattleTech. I believe that this game actually has a surprisingly low amount of achievements as far as the game is concerned, because there's not a lot there really, if we're getting right down to it, because the game itself only has 19 achievements, and I think that really does hurt it from a replayability standpoint, because you don't have as much of a reason other than just wanting to see the other high reward mission chains, because like I said, there is a lot of content there, and so I can understand why some people feel like, hey, there's no reason for me to play this anymore because I've already got all the achievements, because I'm actually pretty close to getting all the achievements, to be honest with you. And dang these mercs. I'm close to getting all the achievements right now myself, and other than just wanting to actually see what else is available, you don't have a big incentive from an achievement perspective to get in there and actually play it again. And that's one thing I think BattleTech did a lot better. Well, at the same time, I think BattleTech had too many achievements. So I think there could be a nice middle ground here with this game and BattleTech, in my opinion. But right now there is no, that middle ground just isn't there, unfortunately. And one of the things I think would make a lot more sense is if you had the ability to max out your reputation with such and such a group. But you don't have that option with this game that you do with the Battletech game. So I think that's definitely something to consider for sure. The difficulty in the game can be very uneven at times. And that's definitely something I would point out is like sometimes the difficulty, you would get into a mission and it'd be like really easy. And then that same difficulty number would be so much harder in, like a randomly generated one. Or just the final mission of the game, for instance. The final mission of the game was a bit on the ridiculous side as far as what they threw at you. And that is something I can also compare with the Battletech game. It's kind of a bit of a failing of, I guess, the video gameness of this is like, if I'm going into this mission and I know I'm going to be getting hit with just an insane amount of people, why don't I take all of my mechs with me? Or at least let me take a full company or something. And I know they do it to keep the difficulty well balanced or something, for lack of a better word, but at the end of the day, I don't know, it just seems like that's more the video game aspect of it, and it seems like maybe they could do a better job with the AI portion of the game, so that, if I'm taking on these mechs, they're challenging me because the people that are actually in the mechs are actually good and not just kind of silly people. So I don't know. It seems something like that to me. It's kind of weird. Anyway, let me just try to put something else here. So another thing to see here, as far as DLC is concerned, I've praised Heroes of the Inner Sphere and Legend of the Kestrel Lancers. I'm going to be a little bit neutral on Rise of Rasselhog, mostly because I haven't really played the main storyline of that mission, or that DLC, excuse me, so I don't really know how good it is. My assumption is it's going to be pretty decent, probably along the same lines of Legend of the Kestrel Lancers, but I haven't done it yet, so I'm going to have to pretty much take a neutral stance on it. One thing it doesn't do is it doesn't add a bunch of high reward mission chains that basically the other two did. It does add a couple of good mechs, and I will basically nerd out a little bit and say one of the reasons I wanted to get it was because I wanted to get the Crusader mech in the game. So yeah, it basically it's a decent expansion, but the bounty hunter aspect of it, I don't know how good the bounty hunter aspect is. It's okay, but I'd say that it's a little bugged, to be honest with you. There have been plenty of times I went to go and land on a place and basically said, oh, there's a dropship coming in, and then nothing came in. So a little bit of a bugged expansion pack, it seems like to me, honestly. But at the end of the day, it could be pretty good. I just honestly don't know off the top of my head because I haven't actually done the campaign mission itself, and I think doing the campaign mission would be the true test of how good of a DLC is it. Having said that, on the other hand, Call to Arms is by far the weakest DLC in this game. It adds one high reward mission chain. It's a 5 mission chain, and it honestly is laughably easy. It really is. There's no other way of saying it than just laughably easy, and it's just kind of a disappointment, really. So I mean, they add a bunch of melee combat and whatnot. And honestly, I don't know if the stuff they added when it comes to melee combat is something that they probably didn't just add after the fact too, so that you may not even need the DLC. So I'm not entirely sure about that. I will say though that by far it is the weakest of the DLC, and it kind of a joke, for lack of a better word, really. See if this blows up. No, doesn't blow up. Okay. So yeah, that's a lot of the cons I have. I mean, to be fair, most of these cons that I'm mentioning are fairly minor, and I don't think they should detract too greatly from the game itself. But there are definitely some cons to take into consideration. One thing I do want to do is do some comparisons with the BattleTech game, and basically there's a lot of good comparisons I think you can make between these two games, and I think basically there's a big difference with how they do salvage in this game as compared to BattleTech, and I think that in a way, at least in my opinion, I think that they did a better job with salvage in BattleTech than they did with this one. It just made a lot more sense realistically. Basically, what you had to do in BattleTech is you had to garner up enough pieces from the different mechs, basically, and then you could put together a mech from all the different components. So it made it feel more realistic in that sense. With this game, basically, like, oh yeah, I've got this. Yeah, what's the best way I can describe it? Basically, oh yeah, we salvage this mech here, and we can just put together everything we need to, make it work again. Seems a little far-fetched, for lack of a better word. Basically, is what it really comes down to. And they did a much more realistic job in the BattleTech strategy game than this one, at least in my opinion. Another thing that I think, this is not really so much a better, but it's definitely a something to take note of. And I think that the hardpoint system that they used in this game was much more granular than it was in BattleTech, which to a certain extent makes sense, because basically, but yeah, I would say that probably the BattleTech strategy game was a little more, it wasn't quite as fast-paced as, say, the Alpha Strike version of BattleTech, but it wasn't as detailed as this version either. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I will say that it was a lot easier to do some more interesting setups. For instance, because it was usually just like you have an energy slot or a ballistic slot, you could put whatever you wanted to in any of those locations, basically. And one of the things you can't do in this game is you have to look at the size of the slot, which definitely makes things a little more difficult. Because I remember I had a Shadowhawk in the strategy game where I was able to put a PPC in its arm, and that made it an actually pretty decent mech, to be honest with you. And that wasn't something that was available to me in this one, because they did make it a lot more low level to even like small, medium, large kind of slots, basically. So I mean, that's not really a criticism. It's just a way of saying, okay, yeah, there's definitely differences as far as this is concerned, and that's definitely something to keep in mind for sure. Not, like I said, not really a con so much as basically just something to highlight. Let's see here. I would say that the amount of mechs that you have, excuse me, not the amounts of mechs, like the types of mechs, but the fact that you can get a whole bunch of mechs in this game, it makes a lot more sense in the Battletech game why you could have so many mechs available to you. Whereas in this game, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the you just have a Leopard dropship. And that's kind of one of the things where they really drop the ball from a lore perspective, is they drop a Leopard dropship can only carry 4 mechs, period. And that's kind of what, you know, their whole excuse for you only ever being able to deploy with 4 mechs at a time is because you only got a Leopard dropship. Okay, fine. But having said that, in the Battletech strategy game, they made a lot more sense with you having a whole bunch of mechs because you had your own jump ship in that game that you could basically get. And you don't, I mean, they don't ever actually say that you have your own jump ship per se. Maybe you do, and maybe that's just something I didn't understand from the game itself. But it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems a lot less believable that you would be able to have as many mechs in storage here in this game, where they explain that better in the Battletech strategy game, at least in my opinion. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's I guess that's a bit of a minor nitpick as well. One thing I can definitely say that this game for sure does a much better job with is the actual map itself. The map in this game of the Inner Sphere is so much better. It's so much more detailed as well. I mean, well, obviously you have the entire Inner Sphere. You don't have just the periphery, little small periphery section that you had in the Battletech game. So I definitely got to point out how much better that aspect is in this game compared to Battletech. So a huge improvement there. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see here. I would say that I think there's more replayability as far as Battletech is concerned if you're looking at, once again, the achievements, because they give you more of a reason to play it again, to basically get better reputation with different factions, and that's something they don't really do in this game. I kind of already mentioned that, but I want to go ahead and re-highlight it again, basically. But this is definitely something I think that you could say is definitely a failing of this game as compared to Battletech, and that is that there's a way to eject in the Battletech strategy game, and it just seems like that would be something very simple to implement, but they don't have a way to eject in this game, and that just seems so weird to me, especially since the enemies eject. Like when they lose their weaponry, they will eject, but you can't tell your guys to eject. You can't eject, and that just seems so weird to me. That's just my opinion as far as that's concerned. I definitely think that's something they need to address, hopefully in a future patch or something, because it definitely should be a thing that you should be able to do as a player. I shouldn't have to rely on well, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like something, just a very simple basic feature should be available, but it's not. So I guess really at the end of the day, that's pretty much the majority of my thoughts as far as MechWarrior is concerned. And I guess really when it comes right down to everything, the real question is the game fun? And in my opinion, the answer is absolutely yes. I don't think it's perfect. I've obviously mentioned some of my nitpicks per se, and so definitely not perfect, but they do a very good job with the game, at least in my opinion. there are obviously things that they can improve on, but at the end of the day, I think they did a really good job actually, and something I really enjoyed. And if you're a fan of BattleTech and you love the lore, I think you'll definitely be a fan of this, and it's definitely something I would say as a BattleTech fan. It's a must play game. And I am not doing so great, am I? It's kind of hard to do a review and talk at the same time, I guess. Anyway, overall, as far as a score, I think I would give this game I'd say probably a 95. Because I mean, there are some obviously some pretty big nitpicks I have with the game, but at the end of the day, I think overall it's still a really good game. So yeah, I'd say 95 out of 100 would probably be what I would say. Is I'm probably going to get blown up here. That's okay. But yeah, definitely 95 out of 100. If you're a BattleTech fan, it's definitely a must-play game for sure, and definitely give it a try. So anyway, that'll do it for this video. Even though I had things a little more prepared and written down, it's still a little bit rambling, but that's okay. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.